name is Craig Nash, and we'd like to invite you to another It's a Grand Life, and we're delighted that you're here with us today. You know, there's an old Irish proverb, and I want to paraphrase this, and it says that everybody's a blessing, some when they come in to our home and others when they leave. And our guest today, Greg Long, my personal life coach, is a blessing when he comes and when he goes. He's the most positive person I know, and I know you're going to be blessed by the content of today's It's a Grand Life. Greg, welcome to It's a Grand Life. Always good to see you. Thanks so much for being our guest today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Craig. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, can you tell our listeners about how you became a life coach? You didn't start out that way.
No, I started out, years ago when I was struggling to move forward in my life, and I really had a lot of trouble. And then I hired a coach, and I noticed that my first experience with a coach and mentor was everything that I wanted to accomplish was accelerated because he could see things I couldn't see. And so from that moment on my career, I created a building company, a property management company, and now a coaching company. Along the way, I've always had a coach. Now, is it necessary? It's not, because I'm sure I would have got there. I would have just been 10 or 15 years older.
Right.
So a coach really helps people in the capacity of keeping them on track for the goals they want to fulfill on.
And how has your life experience helped you prepare to deal with grand families, families where, grandparents are raising their grandkids?
Well, one of the things that I know happens is that when it gets to that situation, in a lot of cases, it's because of substance abuse. And I'm happen to be in recovery. I've been in recovery now going on 30 years. So my background is understanding, seeing, being in the position where I understand, it doesn't make it any easier, but I understand what the parents are going through. Not the grandparents necessarily in the moment, but what the parents are going through when they have a child and they're actually addicted to some substance or addicted to something else, and I know from past experience that they didn't wake up one morning and want to be that way.
Right. It's one of the things about you that I've marveled at is you don't necessarily agree with everything that your client says, and so you can be very direct in trying to help us see the reality of the situation. In fact, you like your clients to look at life sometimes from their child's perspective, and why is that so important?
Well, if I'm more committed to being right about something than looking from somebody else's perspective, I'm always going to be aggravated and upset. And if you notice, Craig, and this is for all of us, this is for everybody listening. When I'm fighting to be right about something, my life is just miserable. I don't sleep at night. I don't eat well. My relationships are horrible. And it's all because I woke up one morning and said, I'm right and everybody else is wrong. And so I have to get another perspective. I have to sit in their world and get another perspective called what if, so I can have a little compassion for the person I'm dealing with. Without that compassion, it's going to be a miserable journey.
But that's not real easy to not want to be right. We've lived our whole life trying to be right. Right. And it takes a long time to shift that perspective. And
it really does. But there's two worlds, right? There's two worlds out there. There's the what's happened, and the decision I made about what's happened. And then when I make a decision about what's happened, I love being right about it. Right? Is it the truth? No, it's a decision that I made. So, the changing my philosophy and understanding that your opinion is just as valid as my opinion gives me an opportunity to have you take a second look at your opinion. But if I'm being right that your opinion doesn't matter, you will never look at your opinion again. You'll dig your heels in.
And, since you and I have been working together for all these years, I have this little guy that jumps on my shoulder, this little Greg Long, a doll that says, "Oh, now you're trying to be right." And and what's really become clear to me is, do I have am I willing to take a stand and be right at the expense of the relationship?
That's right.
And that is it's really helped me to pause. And I think that would be a real blessing for our grand families as well. We're in a new situation, and we're not always right, but we have very strong opinions, and we're operating oftentimes, I know in my experience, in the midst of a lot of pain, because the situation we're in is not easy, and we didn't count on it, and yet we wouldn't leave our grandkids high and dry. We're not saying that, but it's there is an adjustment, isn't there?
Sure there is. Of course there is. And I want to be right. But, I tell you, it doesn't provide anything. If I go to the only thing to deal with, your kids are doing what they're doing, and they've left you in a position that you didn't plan on. So your intention wasn't fulfilled. Your intention is this time of your life, you're going to go this direction, and you spent your whole life getting there. Right. And now there's this major interruption called, well, they didn't ask permission of me to do this. Right. And so I'm angry, I'm upset, and I'm not angry necessarily and upset at them. I'm angry at the situation. Right. I'm angry I'm just angry at the situation. And then I don't direct it at somebody did something to me. Because once I direct it at somebody did something to me, I become a victim in my own life. And then you have a couple of victims raising their grandkids. Right. Instead of powerful people that starting to deal with, oh, my plans were interrupted, I'm going to have to figure out how to deal with that.
And looking at it from a hopeful perspective as opposed to a victim perspective. Exactly.
Because listen, you might as well just throw your power out the window if you're going to blame. Because it's serving it up on a platter. I give it away. I wake up every morning powerless, which means I'm a victim.
Right.
Instead of every morning, I'm going to wake up and start to deal with, okay, good. Yes, my plans got redirected and they're distorted, and now I'm going to have to take on different things. So I've got to deal with my emotions, not dealing with blame.
Right. And one of the things that you talk about a lot when you work with your clients, and you do work with clients all over the world, and whether they're in Australia or London or any place. And I know you started in Michigan, but your clientele has just really expanded. And I'm sure you say this to your Australian clients and your British clients, as well as your folks here in Michigan, but you're all about cleaning up your messes or resolving conflicts immediately. Why don't you talk about that for a little bit?
Well, listen, we're all going to make mistakes in life, right? One of the things that I really understand about being right is I'm right about something, so I don't have to go out in the world and make a mistake. Because once I become right, I don't have to expand. I don't have to explore. I don't have to do anything that's uncomfortable. So I can just sit in my rightness and not do anything. But the moment that I go out in the world and I grow and I become a bigger human being, I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to offend people. I'm going to do things that I'm not necessarily, I didn't wake up in the morning planning on doing. Right. I'm going to give my word to be somewhere and forget to go there. All these things, right? But if I continue to do them without cleaning them up, it's almost like my view you wear glasses and I wear glasses, right? Mm-hmm. Or the windshield of your car. You might as well spray a little dirt and water on your windshield or on your glasses, because every time I leave something not cleaned up, it fogs up and distorts my view. And we think it's over there with them. And in reality is I'm walking around with all these inauthentic ways of being and not dealing with them. So it's really, and I don't know why human beings have such trouble cleaning up their messes. When you're late for an appointment, the first thing you do is give all the reasons I'm late for an appointment, right? Because if I got some good reasons, then it's acceptable. Right. But that's, I guess, just kind of how we've been raised. We've got to come up with 5 different excuses but this whole idea that cleaning up the mess and how good you feel afterwards, right? And it's it's absolutely critical to having a positive frame of mind, isn't it? Well, disease comes. We're a particular for lack of better word, we're a particular vibration in life. And every time that I give my word to do something, then I don't keep it. I've lowered this vibration. I've lowered it and lowered it and lowered it. And every time I go to clean it up, I've raised it back up again. Because I just go, oh, I apologize for that. My intention wasn't to harm you or do whatever we did. And now I've raised my vibration back up. Now, if you think about it, disease lives down here as a vibration. This is just a visual, right? Not the truth, but a visual. Disease lives down here. So if I continue not to clean up my messes, my vibration gets lowered, my vibration gets lowered, my vibration gets lowered, and my vibration gets lowered. And then all of a sudden I'm sick all the time and wonder why. Right. So to continue to clean up things as I go along, and I can't create anything new on top of something inauthentic.
And so you're saying there's a direct link between not being authentic and sometimes how we feel, if we're sick or if we're healthy. And
absolutely, disease is because all of the inauthentic ways of being that I've created has me attract disease. And when I get to that point, listen, we all know that there's certain people in your life that they're sick over and over and over again.
Right.
And if you look a little deeper, it's the ones that have become victims to their own stories. And when someone did something to me, right? Instead of, And so it's not, I give away my power and my responsibility, and then I start to attract things in my life.
So if you were talking to one of our grand families, and we've got a number of folks that listen to our podcast, and maybe they have a child living on the streets with behavioral health or substance abuse issues, and you want to keep the messes clean and you want to be authentic and have integrity, what would you say to them if they're in this situation?
I would deal with my relationship with me. One of the things is an understanding. Right. And understanding that whatever they're out there doing is a disease. It's a sickness.
Right.
Right. But a lot of times we want to blame. And inside of the world of blame, if I'm blaming all the time over there with them, then I'm going to keep them out on the streets. And so one of the things that I would say to all the grandparents, that your kids listen, my kids aren't perfect either. They haven't got there, but they're not perfect, right? But I still have to, every time I view them, I have to view them as who God created, someone who's perfect, whole, and complete. And then in my presence, they can start to deal with their stuff. Right. So when they get done doing what they're doing, when they come back to me, I'm not going to hold it over their head. I'm going to only see their greatness, and then they'll start to show up in that space. But one of the, it's forgiveness, it's acceptance. This is the cards you were dealt. Do I like it? No, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. It's an interference, right? It's not what 100%. I planned.
Right.
Yeah, but this is the cards I was dealt. So practice the acceptance, practice love, practice forgiveness, practice gratitude. And that's the only thing that's going to have you survive it. Because if you don't, the impact on the grandchild that you're with is going to be tremendous.
Well, that's a great point, Greg. And how can you begin to recognize that you're not being authentic, that you're not being loving, you're not being forgiving? Because you still have to have boundaries, correct?
You have to have boundaries. Yep. Very painful.
Very painful. So, I mean, how can we as grandparents raising our grandkids and dealing with our own kids who are maybe not on the right path, how can we identify that and start making these necessary changes in our relationships?
Well, I promise, Craig, when you take a look, there's all that's missing is a consistency. See, I want to create boundaries, but all of a sudden I check in with my feelings instead of what boundaries I created. So if I create solid boundaries with my children and with my grandchildren that says, listen, if this behavior here happens, this is the consequence. There's no reason for me to get angry. I don't even have to get upset, but most of us get really upset. We explode because someone broke the boundary. No, we just enforce the consequence. We can even apologize for I'm so sorry I have to do this, but you're not going to have a TV for a month. I love you dearly, right? But it's a consequence for offshoot behaviors. So if I start to be consistent, and it's the same thing if I've got a child living on the streets, right?
Right.
I love you so much, but the consequence of your behavior means you can't come to the house anymore.
Right.
I love you. I want to let you come, but I'm not going to do that. There's no reason for me to get angry. I
Well,
just have to stay consistent with what I'm asking and what I said.
so you could still say I'm cheering for your recovery and praying every day for you.
Come on.
But and I'm at the sideline, just clapping my hands. But we can't go back to this. You breaking through the boundaries and going back to that time of enabling and allowing this behavior to just continue without being checked. So you're
That's
saying
right.
If we respond to our kids this way, it is way better for us emotionally. You're saying
it's better for them too, right? Because every time, listen, if I was on this, and I was on the streets period of my life, right? And every time that I went to my parents and they gave me what I asked for, they delayed my recovery.
Oh man, that's big.
They delayed it. They postponed. Why? Because I found a weak link in my survival mechanism called my parents. And when they stopped giving me something, I went and found somebody else. And they gave me something and they delayed the process, right? So as a parent, every time that I'm surrendering to the boundaries that I've set up, I'm delaying the process of getting them where they need to be.
So you're holding the line for your kids.
That's right. It's the purest form of love. And it's the hardest thing for a parent to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Scott Peck writes in A Road Less Traveled, he writes, love is never doing anything to harm another person's growth.
Wow. That's
the purest form of love, right? So every time I give in and don't honor the boundaries that we've created, I'm harming their growth. So
we need to hold the line in an effort to see our kids grow and come out of this situation, and hopefully see some restoration in the family unit. So
and then go as a team. If you're both there involved, as a husband and wife, grandfather, grandmother, then go hold each other. Go ahead and be angry, be upset, jump up and down, but don't surrender to the boundaries because you're harming the child and their growth.
That's just terrific. And but you've got to be in a pretty good spot yourself to be able to do that, right? You've got to be in a position of power, a position of strength. And you're saying that would mean that all the messes, all the conflict are cleaned up in your life so you can operate with integrity. And, that reminds me of that verse in 1 John 1:9. If we confess our sins, he's faithful and just to forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. That's what you're saying. Clean up all the bad messes, and God will forgive you if you confess it, which I just love that verse. It's a get out of jail free card promise in scripture. And that's what we need to do, Greg, several times a day, I would imagine. I know I do.
Oh, all the time. That's got to be at the end of the day. I have to check in. How did I do today? Do I owe anyone apology? Did I give my word to something and not fulfill it? Do I need to forgive myself because I told myself I wouldn't eat pizza and then I did eat pizza, right? I mean, start to deal with the integrity in the relationship with your words. So you have the power, and then I can enforce and love my child the way they're meant to be loved, not surrender and give them something so I feel good. I'm actually sacrificing my child so I can feel good about myself instead of doing the things that I need to do to feel good.
Right. That's absolutely great. So, so what about, do you have a recipe for starting your day for the grandparents here? How would we start our day to help us cope with these challenging situations?
Well, I can tell you how I start my day, Craig. I get up in the morning, I'm up at 4:30, 4:15, somewhere right in that area. And I sit for a half hour. I sit and I read something very inspirational, spiritual. I put some good stuff in me. Right. And then I go take care of myself. I go for a walk with the dog, usually a longer walk. And all the while I'm listening to something good, something encouraging, something spiritual, something to help me to hang on for the day and have change my view. Because I wake up just like everybody else. grumpy. I don't want to be around people. I don't even like people sometimes, right? And I'm a coach for a living, so I have to deal with that. And if I don't do my morning routine, then I'm left crossing my fingers, hoping it all works out. But by the
Right.
time 7:30 or 8 o'clock comes out when I'm with my first client, you can't mess with me. Because my little voice in my head is saying, go back to bed. You don't have to go to the gym. You should switch gyms and go to that one that has a good smoothie bar. You don't have to do all that stuff, right? You don't
Right.
have to eat properly. You know, so I really start to deal with all the stories that are going in my head. And then I do the best I can. Do I mess up during the day? I absolutely do.
And you talk a lot about being uncomfortable and how we don't like it. But that's what you're advocating. Don't stay in the same rut. You've got to be uncomfortable sometimes.
Well, listen, Craig, all that being right is being comfortable. Right? Because if I'm right, it keeps me safe and comfortable. There's no room for brand new. There's no room for acceptance of others. There's no room for anything new because I'm going to sit here and be right. And then I'm going to complain about love not being present, connectedness not being present, affinity not being present, communication not being present. Why? Because I surrender all those things to be right about something.
That's a big lesson to learn, my friend. Because
it's a choice that we were given.
Right.
I can let go of being right about something and then experience love, affinity, all those things, or I can hang on to being right.
And not make progress anywhere.
No, just sit and be right. Actually alienate people, push people away. Yeah.
One of the things that you've always preached to me is the importance of having a service outlet in your life. Why is that so important to serve others?
Well, it's the biggest message we've gotten from the past is about tithing, right? So if I don't tithe and give freely of my free time and my money and everything else, then I'm holding on to something that is never going to grow.
So
right?
It's like you're planting these things. Is that the idea?
Yeah, I'm planting the seeds, right? I mean, I had an abundance of time when I started my coaching company, right? There was crickets out there, right? I was building some, I had 2 clients. What am I going to do with the other 38 hours a week, right?
Right.
Right. So the more I got involved with different communities, different service outreaches, different ways of making a difference, the more I was whole and complete. That way, when I did have an opportunity to be with somebody, they were talking to somebody that was whole and complete. Not desperate. So
right.
Give. You have to give.
And you're not advocating donating to any particular church or anything like that. You're just saying for your own self, it's time and treasures that you would recommend giving.
Absolutely. And listen, it doesn't necessarily matter where. It's tithing. Right. I'm giving freely because the only time when I give freely, it's amazing the miracles that happen in my life.
100% true.
Yeah.
Living
the harder I try to hold on to something. My mentor told me years ago, he says, Greg, the harder you chase a dollar, the farther away it gets. And I've hung on to that in every philosophy, right? Because if I'm not out there to serve and provide value, I'm chasing something.
Right.
But if I get up every morning and do the best I can to serve and provide value, my bank account takes care of itself.
Absolutely. And that's the opposite of the way we've been taught. We're told this, put a few shekels over here and hold on tightly and all these things. But you're saying live open-handedly, live generously. And we reap what we sow. And there was a pastor who said, you reap what you sow, more than you sow, longer than you sow it. And
That's right.
So it's being generous, being open-handed, and not being right, and cleaning up any personal conflicts or any messes in our life, and being uncomfortable. Don't be afraid to be uncomfortable.
And Craig, one of the things that you did, that I really noticed and admired is when all this was happening, you got help. So you wanted somebody to help you see something you couldn't see. Right. And if you're trying to fix your own thinking with your own thinking, you're in a lot of trouble. My mentor used to tell me, Greg, he says, if you're trying to fix your own thinking with your own thinking, you're consulting an idiot. So one of the, right. So because I've got this thing, my view is distorted. I'm too busy hanging on to stuff. I can't see clearly. So I need somebody to help me see clearly that my child is not doing anything to me. My child woke up one morning, they tried a drug and they found out they were one of the people that the drugs didn't mix with their chemistries. They have an allergy to whatever they're doing, an allergy to what they're putting in their system that they can't control.
Mm-hmm.
It's scientifically been proved. If they could stop it, they would stop it. And they didn't wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to go mess with my parents. They didn't do that. They suffered a severe illness. Now, if they had cancer, you wouldn't be talking about it and be resentful. Right. You'd be sending your prayers for quick healing. You'd be sending their prayers for great direction. You'd be more than happy to take care of their child while they were going through all the chemo and radiation and everything else. Well, I want you to know the process that they're going through right now is like radiation and chemo. It's killing them slowly and get rid of all the stuff. And when they hit the bottom, they'll come out of it. Not on your time frame, not on my time frame. Whenever they hit that bottom, and I want you to know 70% never hit their bottom.
That's 70%. That's huge.
It used to be 10%, but now that there's so much education out there, it's about 70% will never hit their bottom. They'll struggle with drugs and alcohol till they die.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So pray for them to fit into that 30%.
That absolutely to hit bottom, right? And
they got to hit bottom. And then when they try to reach out to them, I've got to have a heart of compassion, or I'm going to just push them back out in the streets again.
Right.
And a lot of times we want people to prove to me that they're ready before I surrender, right? Instead of giving my love freely and setting up boundaries inside of their recovery. So they have something to stand for, something to work for. They got something at stake. And then enforce your boundaries.
Stand your ground. Get
Stand your ground. Love them the way they need to be loved, which is, I'm not going to judge you. I'm just going to set boundaries that work for me. And if you follow the boundaries, you'll get better.
And that sounds all absolutely great, all well and good and what have you, Greg Long. But what do you tell your clients if they cannot stand the situation they're in any longer? They can't deal with the stress. They can't deal with the pain. And what do you say to them?
I think they got to get some help. You know, listen, don't sit at home. Get some professional help to help you deal with what's going on. Right? Because listen, this is the added taking care of the grandchild and all the other things is not easy at all, right? It's very difficult. You need a lot of support systems in place.
Yep.
You need my grandson comes and visit me for Saturday afternoon and I need a nap for 3 days. I mean, I can't even imagine, right? I mean, he's just a ball of energy. He turns 4 next month, right? So I know it's not, I'm not discounting the situation you're in, but you need support groups. You need people around you like you, Craig. You need to have people where you can talk and vent and create and really start to notice where you spend all week being resentful and you're not committed to that. And, you know, start to share the things that are going on. Stop trying to be such a good person. That good person will drive you right into the grave.
And what do you mean by that? Stop being a good person? Well,
everybody holds on to their feelings and they don't want to say anything bad about anybody because they're afraid that that's not right. It's not good. No, vent. I have to vent. It's not the truth.
Right.
I just got hooked on a story up here. This is not real. Have you ever, I don't know if you guys, everybody out here has got to be able to relate to this. Have you ever been watching TV and you had this thought called, boy, I'd really like a piece of cake. And I play with that thought in my head for 3 minutes and guess where I'm at?
The refrigerator. Or
the refrigerator or the bakery or the grocery store. I'll do anything, right? Because I played with the thought for 3 minutes.
Right.
Now, if I play with the thought called, I'm unhappy and it's somebody else's fault. If I play with that thought for 3 minutes, it becomes the truth. And now I'm miserable, I'm upset, I'm angry. So my recommendation is start to deal with when you get hooked on a thought, do something quick. Share with your spouse. Go, gosh, I just had this thought called blame, blame, blame. It's their fault. I'm letting it go. I know it's not true. I'm going to fight that thought and disappear that thought.
Well, how can we be conscious of that? Sometimes those thoughts just come. We got to slow down, and we've got to.
Well, whenever I have a loss of power, I got hooked on something negative. Have you ever noticed that I need a nap at 2 PM? Well, a nap is called resisting life.
Resisting life.
Yeah, if I'm on vacation on the golf course, I never need a nap. But I come back into the real world, and all of a sudden at 2 o'clock, I can't even keep my eyes open. Well, I'm resisting the world that I've created. A world that's difficult, a world that's hard, a world that I can't navigate, a world that's picking on me. I started all those things, and now I need to escape. And the only way that most of us know how to escape is I need a nap. Well, that's not.
Those things are playing in here, you're saying.
They're all in here.
Right.
How come I don't need a nap on the golf course?
Well, I've had some days where the putts weren't going, and I could have used a good nap.
I could have used a good nap, right? But maybe it was a lot of times on the golf course is I'm not keeping my word to do what I said I would, and I snuck off to the golf course. Now I'm living in an inauthentic story, and I'm lying to the people that I promised, saying, oh, I got too busy. I'm sorry, I forgot the appointment.
Right, right.
And now I'm wondering why I'm flinging them in the woods all the time.
And it's all in our head.
It's just what I created.
Just what I created. So what is the one thing you would say to every grandparent that's raising a grand about having a life coach? Why should they consider that?
Well, listen, it's one of the things is if you're really, really committed to being happy and fulfilled, you'll get there on your own. I promise you, but it's going to take a long time. So having a life coach and having a coach in your life is like getting yourself into fast lane for uncovering the limitations that you've created so you can be free and live the life that you want to design, not one you've been stuck with.
That's great.
Right? Because somebody's going to help you. I'm letting somebody help me see the things I can't see so I can accelerate any process I want in life. And it doesn't matter what you're up to. If I want to be a better grandparent and a better parent, a life coach will help me get there. If I want to double the size of my business, a life coach will help you see what's in the way over here with me that your company accelerates. If I want more love in my relationship, a life coach will be able to see what's missing, that if you were to put it in, you'd have passion in your relationship. All those things are available by trusting and allowing somebody else to help you see the things you can't see.
And we have to be uncomfortable, and we have to step out in faith and contact the life coach and get it going.
Well, uncomfortable is part of the process. Change is always uncomfortable.
And that took me a long time to get used to that, because I spent my whole life wanting to be comfortable, and I know I'm not alone in that. But you're saying that the growth doesn't come with comfort.
No, fall in love with being uncomfortable. See, I've been resisting uncomfortable my whole life until I fell in love with it. And so now if I'm not uncomfortable, it means I hit stall and I'm not growing.
So fall in love with being uncomfortable.
Oh, madly in love. Embrace it. Oh my gosh, I'm so uncomfortable. I love today because I know what's on the other side.
The growth is on the other side.
Growth is always on the other side. Everything that I'm looking for is on the other side of being uncomfortable.
Well, I know I can speak for our grand families that we talk to, the folks that listen to this podcast, and say we're uncomfortable a lot because we're in situations that aren't familiar, that we didn't plan for, and we are going to daddy-daughter dances at the grade school, and we are volunteering at the elementary school, and we're doing things we did not count on, but. This is where the good Lord has us, and we need to get comfortable with this uncomfortableness. And, that just reminded me, I was at a daddy-daughter dance at my granddaughter's school a couple of weeks ago, and I went in with that attitude that I was going to just make friends with as many parents as I could and be as positive as I could. And it was just an absolutely great night, as opposed to sitting around being paranoid and worrying, boy, everybody's younger than me. This is really no fun. I'd rather be sitting home watching the Red Wings or something, or the Detroit Tigers. but embracing the uncomfortableness, which I got from you, really helped me make it through that. And I just hope all of our listeners, you don't have to be in Michigan to work with Greg Long. You could be in Australia, or you could be in London, or you could be in Colorado, or wherever. But you can take clients from all over the world. Correct, my friend?
Yeah. That started back during the pandemic. I quadrupled in size because I had a new audience now that was on the internet instead of in person. Right. Yeah.
What's the best way for our listeners to get in touch with you?
You can email me at longgreg81@gmail.com. Send me a note and I'll get back with you soon.
Well, before we let you go, Greg, and it's been just such a pleasure to have you here on It's a Grand Life. What is the one thing that you would like grandparents to know, to really focus on? Is it just embrace the uncomfortableness, or lead with integrity? What's the one thing you want all our listeners to walk away with?
Well, one of the things I'd really like all the listeners to walk away with is forgiving whoever actually put you in the position you're in. Because then you can be forgiving grandparents for the people you're taking care of instead of resentful grandparents. And I think if kids are raised in a world where the people who are raising them spend more time forgiving than they do hanging on to resentments, I think the world would be a better place.
It's all about forgiveness. That's absolutely terrific. And I hope you'll come back and join us again, and
absolutely,
and share more stories and more solutions for keeping us all cleaning up all our messes and living in a state of uncomfortableness. And that's quite a challenge. But Greg, always a blessing to be with you. Thank you so much for being our guest here on It's a Grand Life, and I hope you get lots of calls, my friend. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Craig. Great to be with you.
Remember to never waste your pain. Your story can help others. That's the whole point of It's a Grand Life. Please reach out to me. I can be a blessing to you and pray for you, or help you connect to free resources that can make your journey a little easier. God can use your situation to bless others, even halfway around the world. Together, we have hope. And as my own grandma used to say, and she was always quoting biblical promises to me, but this one from Isaiah 26:3. He will keep him or her in perfect peace, whose mind is fixed on him because he trusts in him. Please make sure to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss an episode. I look forward to talking to you again real soon, but remember, with God's help, it's a grand life.